Well, this is pretty broken.
No.
Hello everybody, it's Hater and welcome to one of my most broken builds to date. Because right around a month ago, I released a video talking about the baby hammer on Middle Tree Sunbreaker and how it can hit over 400,000 damage. That is now my most viewed video to date with a monstrous 42,000 views, which first off, wow, thank you guys so much. I never thought a single one of my builds would achieve such a goal ever. And second off, now that the dawning is here, along with multiple changes to the sandbox, I returned to this build and updated it to the absolute abomination you guys just witnessed. So if you enjoyed the idea of ignoring all forms of champion mod logic, then leave a like on the video, comment any build ideas you guys have for the future, and subscribe to the channel so you'll be up to date whenever a new build video like this comes out. But to get things started, guys, there is a lot going on in this build to make the damage cap happen. In the first video, I talked about a combination of 4 things that allowed the throwing hammer to deal over 400,000 damage or more every hit. One is going to be the Syntheseps exotic arms that allow us to deal 200% more damage whenever there are 3 or more enemies in close proximity to our character. Second is the buff Roaring Flames from the Middle Tree Hammer subclass itself, stacking up to 3 times and adding 120% more damage to all of our abilities. Third is a pellet shotgun with the perk 1-2 punch, causing our next melee attack to deal 200% more damage to champions after landing every pellet in the shot, or 350% more damage if it's a boss. And finally, fourth is the Tractor Cannon exotic shotgun, debuffing the enemies for 30% more damage on top of everything. In the loadout we'll be using today though, we're keeping everything except the Tractor Cannon because with the Dawning event returning, it also reintroduced the Zephyr sword. But instead of it being arc energy like how it was in the past, it is now stasis energy, which isn't that really important. The new perk Cold Steel that it can roll, however, is. With Cold Steel, it allows the heavy attack on the sword to slow enemies and eventually freeze them. That right there is what makes this build so insane, because on paper, it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but something a lot of people don't know is that whenever an enemy is considered frozen, there is an astronomical scaling modifier added to the next melee attack that hits them and breaks them out. This just means that whenever we land 3 light attacks with the sword, even though it only says powered attacks on the perk, it freezes the target. When applied to enemies like champions, this immediately opens them up for the 1-2 punch hammer combo. And then another thing real quick to make sure is that you have your empowered melee button bound to something that isn't quick melee. Because if you don't do that and you gain bionic enhancements from Syntheseps, you're just gonna hyper lunge towards every enemy in the room and not throw your baby hammer. So make sure you pull up your keybinds on PC or button layout for console, I believe. I'll make sure to give Shin a comment from the previous hammer video to help explain how to do it for console. Then bind the charge melee key to something you're comfortable with. But with that now established, let's talk about the build that takes advantage of the freeze. Starting off with the mods, we'll be using a Charged with Light build mixed with the elemental wells to keep us alive when we're going for the combo. The mod that will be creating said elemental well will be Melee Wellmaker, creating a solar well whenever we get a kill with the baby hammer. Then when we pick up said solar well, it's going to give us ability energy to all 3 of our abilities. That's really not the important part of it, because we'll be making it do something else that's actually useful, with the mod Well of Life giving us 10 seconds of healing, and elemental charge so that picking it up gives us 2 stacks of Charge with Light. Then to use those stacks of Charge with Light, we're going to use Protective Light so that whenever our shields break, we gain a 4 times damage resistance for 10 seconds. This is basically going to act as a safety net, so whenever we go in for the hammer throws, we don't immediately die to whatever we're trying to kill. Then the final icing on top will be Focusing Lens from the artifact, so that the hammer will deal 25% more damage to the stasis affected target. Like I said before guys, there is a lot going on in this build, and if you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments. But let's move on over to what the loadout will look like on my Titan specifically, and I can break down where everything's gonna go on top of some extra tips that could help. In my loadout, I'm using the Monte Carlo exotic auto rifle so that it's synergized with the build, giving me my hammer back whenever I lose it. And on top of that, I get ×5 Markov chain whenever I kill something with the baby hammer. You could also swap this out for the newly buffed Cryosthesia sidearm, because now its charged shot whenever you get a kill with it can be held indefinitely, and it has a toggle to swap to the freeze shot so you can freeze multiple enemies at once instead of just one with the sword. For my 1-2 punch shotgun, I'm going to be using the Found Verdict from Vault of Glass. You do not have to use this specific shotgun, it's literally just the one I use. If you don't happen to have a 1-2 punch shotgun, there will be a link down in the description to the website light.gg, so you can click on it and see every single shotgun in the current game that can roll 1-2 punch. And then of course, in my heavy slot, I'm using the Zephyr. I actually have a random rolled version of it with Cold Steel and Duelist Trance. The only perk that actually matters on this weapon is Cold Steel. So if you did happen to save the curated one from the Dawning Quest, then that will work perfectly fine. Moving over to the armor and starting off with the helmet, I have mine as solar, and I've got the melee wellmaker mod at the end with a sword ammo finder to make sure I always have the combo. Next, over at my syntheseps, I have these as solar, and I'm using the Well of Life mod at the end of it with champion mods just in case if I ever have to use them. Trust me, even though we can just ignore champions outright, we still want to have them stunned so we can set them up. Next up on my chest piece, I have this as Void Energy, and I'm using Elemental Charge at the end with 2 resist mods of choice that I can swap out for any content that I'm doing. Something else that you could do though, because having syntheseps and lower tier content can just be way overkill than you expect, you can change the chest piece over to the Severance Enclosure exotic, which in layman's terms turns the hammer into a mini nuke whenever it kills enemies. So to keep the build simple, when I swap over to Severance Enclosure when I'm doing lower tier content, my legendary arms are also going to be solar and use the same mods at the syntheseps, and I'm also using the same mods inside the Severance Enclosure as my Void chest piece. Moving over to the boots, and as always in every single build that I make, mine are Void with Protective Light at the end, an ammo scav of choice that will help me get more ammo, and better already to heal me whenever I pick up Orbs of Power. And then finally, on the class item, this is where it comes down to preference with mods because you only need Focusing Lens in it. But if you want to experiment, you could use stuff like Bountiful Wells, Explosive Well Maker for Severance Enclosure. Just feel free to experiment with this slot. What I have in mind is Taking Charge, so that getting stacks of charge with light is much more consistent. And that will be completing the build, guys. But before I leave you all to your own devices, let's do a quick demonstration on how to do the combo properly. For the quick demo, guys, we're going to be heading down to Nessus and use everybody's favorite target dummy, Carl. Starting off the moment that I enter the Lost Sector, I'm going to be killing some ads with my abilities just to build up Roaring Flames ×3, and then the moment that I've got it all the way stacked up to 3, I'm going to head over to Carl and pull the sword out. Then when I tag him 3 times with the left click on the sword, he's frozen. The moment that he becomes frozen, I'm going to swap to the 1-2 punch shotgun, shoot him, land all of the pellets, proc 1-2 punch, throw the baby hammer with the button bound to empowered melee attack, and boom, damage cap. Hope you guys enjoy the build, and let me know down in the comments if you cleared anything crazy with it or have any questions about the build. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.